Shalom and welcome again to another edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Adres. We thank you very, very much for joining us on today's show, which is going to focus on the upcoming high holidays. And to help us understand some of the challenges and some of the unique aspects of preparing for the holidays, I want to introduce you to two just wonderful colleagues, young colleagues of mine. Number one, Rabbi Jill Maderer, the senior rabbi from Congregation Rodef Shalom here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Rabbi Jack Paskoff, who is the rabbi of Shar Shamayim in historic Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Great city. So two different styles of congregations, urban, small city, two veterans, I think I can use that term now, of congregational life. And to be very honest with you, two of the shining stars of the rabbinate right now for a variety of reasons. So Jill, Jack, welcome to Seekers of Meaning. Really thank you for joining us and giving us your time. I know it's busy. We're recording this for truthful purposes in the middle of August. So we're just beginning that process of trying to turn ourselves. Elul is coming to figure out what's going to happen on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So let me throw this question out to the two of you, but I'll ask Jill to start. We're starting our preparation. How are you, as a congregational rabbi, preparing your own soul for the high holidays? What do you do anything special to get yourself ready?
Before I respond, I'll just say, Richard, it's great to be with you, and Jack, it's great to be with you. And both of you are actually teachers and mentors of mine from earlier years, and it's wonderful to be together in conversation. I'll say, I think that this year in many ways feels different, and yet one of the powerful aspects of our Jewish tradition is that it holds up in all of these different kinds of challenging eras. It holds up. And so I don't think my actual preparation is much different than every other year. And my own internal preparation and professional preparation involves listening to congregants and understanding where they are in their Jewish journeys. It involves deep conversation and learning with colleagues, and it involves my own study. I'm very attached, in particular, to our Machzor, to our High Holy Day prayer book, and the incredible depth of the words of our sages, and then more contemporary voices and interpretations since then. And so that constantly for me is an anchor at this time of year. I love this period of Elul, the Hebrew month preceding the High Holy Days, but actually also the weeks preceding Elul, because I find Elul to not be quite long enough for me. And this period for me is really, it's a spiritual time, and it's a stressful time because I take the responsibilities seriously. Hopefully not myself too seriously, but the power of this time is real for me. And the text that is really drawing me in right now happens to be one that appears at the very end of Yom Kippur, when we recite Hitchu Lanu, open the gates. And there's this urgency, keep the gates open, but open the gates for me and for us in this particular form when it's Hitchu Lanu. And I think I'm already feeling that sense of urgency. Open the gates to teshuvah, to repentance, but also the gates into spiritual life, into spiritual community, and into our sacred space, which does not always feel safe for everyone these days. And so that is my anchor right now, is that feeling of yearning for the gates to be open.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the gates. Next week, we're going to post an interview with Alden Solovey on his brand new book on meditations for the high holidays. And one of the things I asked him to read and to talk about was one of the meditations he wrote exactly on the gates. It's a fascinating image, and the two of you on the same time. Jack, go ahead.
It's let me respond to Gates first, and then I'll respond to the bigger question. We're Shari Shemayim. We're the gates of the heavens. So I've been intrigued by this image of gates for many years. Gates in all kinds. You have the gate at the baseball stadium. You have the gate at the airport. You have the gate to the cemetery. So that whole image has been with me for a very long time as I think about in our tradition. I believe it was, I don't think it's Mishkan HaNefesh, I think it was Gates of Repentance at the very beginning, that the front page talked about how the gates of tears are never closed. So this idea of gates is a fascinating one to me. And I take very seriously this idea of not only praying that God open the gates for us, but that as a rabbi, I'm invited to guide people to and through those gates sometimes. So it's a very powerful image for me. I don't know how it is for the two of you. Richard, it's been a few years since you've led high holiday services, but for me, I hate to say this, but the service, I'm filled with all kinds of other concerns. Choreography, music cues. Is the person reading Torah going to remember which trope to use?
Are they going to show up?
That's that are going through my mind. And I'm also thinking about the person who leaves apparently to go to the bathroom and doesn't come back.
Right.
I say something to offend them. Are they sick? And I notice these things. So the service itself for me, I hate to use the word, it's performance-oriented. It is this preparation time when I take the massacre off the shelf and I read through it again and I think about how do these things speak to me this year,
right,
in ways that perhaps they didn't. When I look at the Torah portions for the holidays, we talk about Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, and I think, who am I in the story this year? Do I have a piece of that story that's mine? So it is during this intense time of preparation that I do my spiritual work for the holidays. And hopefully to think about also the tshuva I need to do. Who are the people I've hurt? Couldn't have been avoided? And what do I need to do between now and the start of the Yamim Noraim, the days of awe, to make my amends?
I'm so glad you talked about it because, for all the years in leading high holiday services and you two are, channeling it, the lay people think, oh, you're, the high holidays, you're leading services. You don't understand. It's like, you call it the choreography, the choir, the cues, or the person who's supposed to do the reading know to come up. Well, they even have practiced the bracha, or will they turn around and say, well, what do I do now? Which has happened. But have either one of you ever, this has happened to me only about 3 or 4 times in my entire career. And I was ordained in 72, so it's 52 years. Have either one of you in your rabbinate so far ever left the bima on Yom Kippur after the holidays and said, this was spiritually refreshing to me, even though it was hard work, but I feel different? Or as opposed to, I'm glad this is over, I'm going to go home, get the bagel. Has that ever happened to you? Just jump in.
For me, it's happened a couple of times. Honestly, it comes from 2 things. As a mid-sized congregation, we have a cantorial soloist for Shabbat. We have a congregant who does the singing on high holidays. And his rendition of Janowski's Avinu Malkeinu, no matter how many times I stand next to him when he's chanting that always moves me.
Right.
So hearing his interpretations of the music as a layperson, to me, is incredible. And then it's also about watching the people in the congregation. What am I getting from them? What's the energy I'm getting from them? Did I land where I hoped to land? And when I have a sense that maybe I did, that's when I can walk off the bema and say, okay, I did what I needed to do, not only for the congregation and for God and for the Jewish people, but for myself as well.
Thank you. Jill?
I absolutely feel the transformation every year.
Wow.
So I feel very lucky that even while I always have to be thinking about that next transition and the logistics, I am still able somehow to feel the power of the moment. And so I think part of it is the actual liturgy and the ritual. Part of it is, like Jack, looking out into the congregation and feeling connected with them, and also having the privilege of bearing witness to some of the compassion that I see out there among people, just one person opening the book to someone coming in late, something like that touches me. And then working with my clergy team and feeling like there's such a solidarity on the bema. We have each other's backs. And that's the clergy, it's the lay leaders who are participating in these different moments. There's a real feeling of connection for me.
Yeah, I remember, whether it's the high holidays but especially the holidays, as opposed to teaching a class or a Friday night service. But when you walk out there in Rosh Hashanah, Kol Nidre, or whatever, and you see all these people, no matter how big the congregation is, whether it's 100 people or 1,000 people, and if you're privileged to be with a synagogue for a long period of time, as you both have, and you look at these faces, and you can bring back, oh, this person, I remember when this, or I'm so happy to see this person here. There is that sense of wholeness, a shleimut type of a thing, of saying, this is why I was called to do this work. It's moments like this. And that's priceless. That really, and I'm glad also you talked about the music, because the music of the holidays can be transformative as well, and very, very spiritual and uplifting. This is the first high holiday since October 7th. How are you beginning to contemplate how you're incorporating that into the liturgy or your sermons, Yizkor? How are you beginning to think about that? Anybody? But I'll start with Jack.
Look, one of the realities is, theoretically, we all start thinking about sermons a year in advance, right? Yom Kippur is over. What am I going to talk about next year?
On your way off the bema after Nila, right?
Okay. And what I've realized for this year is, between Israel and our domestic situation here, I'm not stressing about planning too far ahead, because the situation is so fluid, and I don't know what it's going to bring. Interestingly, since October 7th, I've lost 2 congregants. One, because I was too ardently supportive of Israel,
Yes.
and one because I asked that we view Palestinians as human beings. So this middle ground that I'm trying to find, and find for myself, not to preach about, but find for myself, is a very fraught area right now. But I can hold both of those truths. I am a lover of Israel. I am a strong supporter of Israel. And I believe that Palestinians are human beings, trapped in this evil of Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. So anticipating all of that, to me, I feel the need to be authentic and reflect what it means to be in that gray area of, I don't know the answer. I'm not a diplomat. I'm not a general. I'm not an elected official. I'm not Israeli. So to be able to say, I don't know, these are some of the things I'm wrestling with.
Yeah.
That to me is what I can offer most authentically.
Yeah. And the wrestling comes from the neshama of our tradition, because we're called upon to wrestle. And God willing, by the time this posts, and again, we're recording this a couple of weeks prior, God willing, there'll be a ceasefire, and perhaps the theme of that sermon will be changed. So, Jill?
I really appreciate both of your comments on it. I, of course, first and foremost, I'm focused on prayers to bring the hostages home, and I would love for that to be irrelevant and outdated by the time the holy days arrive. My challenge in this season, in addition to the layers of tragedy since October 7th, my challenge has been I've felt very frustrated by the mainstream Jewish institutions in our city and in our world, where I think that the extremes have hijacked the microphone, and I think that the extremes are really attracting the most attention. And I'm doing my best to help my congregation reject that binary and reject the thought that we either need to be fully supportive of Israel or we need to be fully supportive of Palestinian rights to statehood. And so I think that makes sense to a lot of people, and a lot of people appreciate that message and others don't. And so for me, I think the challenge is I feel compelled and responsible during these high holy days to bring the message of shared liberation, that neither Israelis nor Palestinians will be secure or safe or whole until each has their own home in their ancestral homeland here. And there in Israel. I say here because my heart is in the East. And that message of shared liberation will, for some, land in a way that challenges them, and for some will land in a way that inspires them, and for some will not be what they want to hear. And so I'm wrestling with the ways that I can remain true to my authentic voice while still raising up the opportunity we have to understand people across lines of difference within a diverse congregation. And so my hope is that people who disagree with each other and with me will do so in conversation and in an effort to try to understand rather than to try to convince, so that we can remain a strong community and feel that we come out of the holy days and continue to live in congregational life together in a way that is connected and strong. And usually I think that is the feeling coming out of the holy days. I feel that most of the congregation, I feel all the more connected afterwards. And my hope is that we can achieve that once again, even though we know there may be a little bit more divisions in terms of people's own perspectives.
We're speaking with Rabbi Jill Maderer, the senior rabbi of Congregation Roder Sholem in Philadelphia, and Rabbi Jack Paskoff, rabbi of Shar Shemayim Congregation in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And when we get back from after this message, I do want to ask you about what you're hearing from your congregants in conversation with them. And we'll be right back with our two colleagues after this message.
For 20 years, the Lubetkin media companies have been producing award-winning audio and video programs. We produce audio podcasts, documentaries, seminar panels, conference speaker videos, tribute videos, and family legacy videos. And of course, the Seekers of Meaning TV show and podcast for Rabbi Richard Address and JewishSacredAging.com. I'm Steve Lubetkin, and I'd love to invite you to explore the ways that we can tell your story in sound and images. Please visit our website at beingthemedia.com, where you'll see examples of our work for other clients. And if you'd like more information, please email steve@beingthemedia.com. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you out there on the net. Take good care.
So we're back with Rabbi Maderer and Rabbi Paskoff. You alluded to what you may be hearing from some of your congregants. What are you hearing from your congregants, thematic wise, or what's troubling them that could possibly be unfolded or folded into a message for the holidays? Are you picking up anything out of the ordinary? I guess that's a bad phrase, but you know what I mean. Jill?
I'm doing a lot of listening and so much learning. And part of the listening comes from congregants who have lots of different perspectives. Part of the listening is actually with those who are Jews or seekers in the community who are not a part of a congregation. And for a lot of people who have either a fraught relationship with Israel or even a stance they might describe as anti-Zionist, for a lot of those folks, they feel very separate from the Jewish community. And I worry that they won't find a place in the Jewish community in their lives. Mm-hmm. So I've been reaching out to folks just to listen and to help them have a positive experience with a rabbi in a synagogue. Even if we disagree a lot, we can often find some areas of common ground. And I'm just trying to understand people, and we're trying to facilitate experiences here within the congregation for people to listen to and understand one another.
Jack?
Jill, it's interesting listening as you talk about these conversations. One of the things that I've been troubled by is that since October 7th, I've reached out to a number of people with different views. And some of them say, well, I'll get back to you. Yes, I'd love to find the time to talk. And they never do. And my first fear is, does that say something about them, or does it say something about me? Am I seen as so rigid in my beliefs that I don't want to hear from someone else? Or is it that some people don't want to have their views tested? I mentioned the person who thought I was too squarely behind Israel, who left the congregation. Her letter of resignation from the congregation said, and please don't talk to me, I don't want to have a conversation about it. Which deeply troubled me. Are you really that sure in your beliefs that something I might say in an hour-long conversation might change your mind? Is that so frightening to you? Or is that you feel that I'm not listening as much as I try to show that I am? I have people all across the board. Lancaster is a very interesting area. Lancaster City, where the congregation is located, is a very liberal area. Lancaster County is about as red as you can get. So we're dealing with this dichotomy of members of the broader community, and it makes things a lot more complicated as I try to hear these stories and sort through them.
This year, as you alluded to, not only the war in Gaza, the political situation, which by the time this posts, it will be in high-level free-form craziness. There is so much concern, free-floating anxiety. I'm sure you've talked to, as I have, therapists in your congregation who are seeing, full practices, people concerned. They may be coming to synagogue in a couple of weeks carrying all this, How do you bring joy to their life in these the High Holidays liturgy can be at times ponderous and, sin and repent. But it seems to be we are in desperate need of joy. of you're alive. How do you bring that to the congregation on these holidays? Anybody want to take a crack at that?
It's interesting. I'm glad you used the word joy.
Yeah.
First of all, people connected to our religious school want things to be fun. All the years I've been on faculty at Camp Harlem, they talk about fun. And to me, it's not about fun. To me, it's about joy, and there is a qualitative difference.
Oh, yes.
Between joy and fun. I want people to experience joy. It's interesting. I brought a small group over to Israel last month, and we visited the Gaza envelope area and saw the destruction and the devastation there. And then we walk around the streets of Tel Aviv. And until you get close to the area known now as Hostage Square, if you're just walking along Dizengoff or Rothschild, life goes on. There are these subtle reminders. There's the empty bin in the ice cream store that is waiting for the hostages to return. But you see couples walking arm in arm. You hear the music. And so there is joy. And I always remind people of the wonderful teaching of our faith that if a funeral procession and a wedding procession reach at an intersection, the wedding procession gets the right of way. So as challenging as it might be, we have to find room and we have to make that joy.
Jill?
I love that teaching about the wedding procession and the funeral procession. And I learned a commentary by our colleague, Rabbi Jennifer Gubitz, who describes that scene and says, I think what's really in the back of all of our minds, which is, she says, maybe in that moment, maybe it's time for a construction project. Widen the road. Because if we actually see each other, shouldn't the people who are in mourning know there is joy out there to come? It won't always be this day. And the people who are experiencing joy should know, we want to bring compassion to those who are in darker times. And so I think that High Holy Days does widen the road for us a bit. I think that liturgy, I agree, Richard, I think it can be very heavy, as it should be. And I also think that the concept of teshuvah and second chances, to me, is also filled with hope, and it's uplifting. And so I think there's actually joy baked into that High Holy Day experience liturgically as well. But I agree that is part of it. And we will bring that joy to every part of it, because we are together and we are not sweeping anything under. We are fully acknowledging the tragedies of the world, the difficulties that our own congregants have in Philadelphia, whether it's in the workplace or in the classroom or on campus, and the antisemitism that is real and in some ways new for many of them in their lives. But it does not end there. The narrative doesn't end there. In fact, we've had for a long time a lot of security during the High Holy Days, and our congregants end up on a line sort of outside of the building before they can make their way in. And we at first used to worry that line would really frustrate people. And in fact, they're so generous of spirit in those moments. They schmooze. We clergy go out, we schmooze with them, and we wait patiently together, because this is a part of what it means to ensure safety. And there's a real spirit of taking care of one another. Even if we're here because of a dark reason, we're going to take care of one another, and we're going to use this time to connect.
Yeah, there's a sermon in that line too, of not only of patience but caring and mutual responsibility around safety. But I wanted to raise the issue of joy, because I'm playing with this. I was talking to a class last month, the mythology of happiness, because America, sells the myth of happiness, which is a myth. But the more I study our tradition, and I think it's, as you were alluding to, part of what we can extract from the High Holiday liturgy, you're alive. It's Nisim B'chol Yom, in the morning blessing. You're alive. There is joy, and this really is impacting this constituency we work with, the Jewish Sacred Aging, because you get to a certain age and you really start to understand those moments of joy, and you seize them. You hold on to them. Jack, you will find holding that new grandchild. Everything else, war, peace, pestilence, famine, politics, that's really nice. But this is sheer, unadulterated joy. And I don't think we teach that enough anymore, but that's my own personal. Before we start running out of time, I got to ask you this question because it's all over the place. Since the pandemic, there's been a wholesale shift in attendance, the way people go to services. I can't tell you how many people, when I'll say, well, where are you going for the holidays? I'm going to sit and go on the machine. Temple Anshe Zoom. So what are you picking up in your particular communities? Are you seeing this leveling off, or are you seeing this is really part of the new reality?
It's definitely part of the new reality. So much so that I actually keep my laptop on the beam with me, so that in moments when we're singing, in moments of silence, I can reach out and respond to people on Zoom and try to engage them.
No kidding.
It's a little bit awkward, but I find that.
Do people message you during the service on Zoom?
It's more like they're talking to each other, and I get to weigh in. When we get to Misha Berach and someone says, my great-grandfather is very ill, I like to be able to take note of that.
That's so cool.
And respond to it in real time. We've also made some wonderful connections. We have members in different states now, and not just people who join us. If they're looking for a congregation to watch a beautiful service, look, I'm sure Jill's service is far more beautiful than mine. And there are certainly plenty of other places. But we've been able to engage people in real substantive ways because of Zoom. We have a woman in Italy who joins us regularly.
Oh, molto bene.
She just had a grandchild, and she lives in Italy. She made a donation to our congregation to honor the birth of her grandchild. You
going to do the baby naming?
I wish. But this is all thanks to Zoom.
No, so you're on the Bima, you have the laptop open, somebody chats, and then you can answer while they're doing, Sharim. That's so cool. There's a movie in this, but go ahead.
I just think it's important.
No, I think but this is exactly why I wanted to ask the question, because we didn't have a class of this at HUC. But all kidding aside, it really does open a window to congregations saying, look, you're no longer bound by a building. Your congregation is expansive as you want to make it. Jill, do you do that on the Bima?
I think that description is beautiful, Jack, the way you're able to interact in real time. And it's something that we did, that laptop on the Bima approach is something we did when we first came back from COVID on Shabbat regularly. And now it's just not the technology we've chosen as the right technology for our sanctuary. But I think the idea of leveraging all of our resources is the right idea, and to share what you have. I've no doubt your service is as beautiful as ours. To share what you have with people wherever they may be is, I think it's an opportunity. For me, it probably doesn't need to be said, but there's nothing like physical presence and physical energy. And it is also challenging, I find, to be in a hybrid setting. It's for me more natural to bring all of my energy to the screen or all of my energy to the in-person community. And so the back and forth I find to be just another layer of challenge. But I think we find the opportunities where we can. We too have people from far away tuning in on Shabbat or Torah study. We have a regular to our Torah study from Arkansas and another from Massachusetts. And, part of me wonders, I hope I am not standing in the way of their seeking Jewish community in person where they live. But I think that there is something beautiful in the reach that we're able to have.
So last question before we have to end. The easy question. A couple of weeks from now, you'll both be on the Bima. New Year's beginning. What do you hope in your neshama? What do you hope for the coming year? Jill?
I hope that in this polarizing world, I hope that people are able to connect in a new way, maybe connect with somebody who they haven't really understood in the past, or connect spiritually with God in a way that feels new, or with their own understanding of their own souls, some kind of renewal in that way.
Oh, thank you. Jack?
Look, to say I hope for peace is a gimme.
Right.
But certainly that's at the top of my list. And we referred earlier to binaries, that we can come to see the world as something more than, to quote my travel agent in Israel, something more than zeros and ones.
Oh, shit.
Okay. Right. That this isn't a binary, that I can hear someone, that there is middle ground, that there are ways for us to engage with each other, and to see the Tzelem Elohim in each other more than anything else. And maybe that's a tall order, but we still have to keep hoping.
Well, the high holidays are there for tall orders. That's why they're there. So, Rabbi Jill Maderer, Rabbi Jack Paskoff, thank you very much. You guys are great. And I wish you just happiness in this new year. Most of all, health. Preach well, do well, take care of yourself and your family, because you're very, very special, both of you. Thank you very, very much.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Take care. Shana Tova.
Thanks for having us.
To all of you, thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition of The Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. If you'd like to help continue the work of these podcasts and our website, please go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com, scroll down to the conveniently located donate button, and we appreciate your support. If you'd like to make a comment or concern about the podcast or the website, or a question about Jewish Sacred Aging, feel free to email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies in beautiful, bucolic, wonderfully peaceful Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Again, thank you very much for joining us. I'm your host, Rabbi Richard Address. And until we see each other again, please stay safe. And most of all, be kind to one another. Shalom, Todah.